recording. And I'm just going to do a quick little spiel. So I am Miriam Green, daughter of Steve and Ruth. I'm the Director of Marketing and Alumni Affairs at American Friends of the Hebrew University. Thank you everyone for joining us today for this reunion. It's really special, even if I wasn't part of the class. So if you just joined, you will be muted during most of it until we call on you to share your update, but we do encourage you to keep your camera on. Like Phil said, we will be recording this and I will be sharing it with everyone after. And just to let you know, there are multiple ways that you can get involved with us from participating in events, whether virtual like this or in person, sharing your alumni story and photos, letting us know if you have job openings to put on our alumni job board. And just a couple of quick ways that if you're interested in giving to the university, you can do so through the Alumni Annual Fund, which supports student scholarships at the university, as well as if you're interested in talking about arranging a planned gift. And that's all the fundraising spiel. And soon we will be launching our alumni business directory on our website. So if you're interested in learning more about any all of these opportunities, you can email me at alumni@afhu.org. I want to give a big thank you to Phil for chairing this reunion and generously allowing me to pitch in. And now, like he said, we are going to take a quick look at what the university is like today. All right.
It starts with a spark that lights the way to progress. Ideas, questions, and solutions that fire up the imagination. Discoveries leading to innovations radiating with hope. Since opening its doors in 1925, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem has inspired the relentless pursuit of knowledge for meaningful change in our world, with a unique culture that empowers innovators to push the limits of human potential and achieve things we never imagined were possible. Hebrew University has evolved into a global leader across academic disciplines to develop cutting-edge research, educate leaders, and prepare future generations of outstanding scientists and scholars in all fields of learning. Consistently ranked among the top 100 universities in the world, Hebrew University has an award-winning faculty that produces scientific breakthroughs and commercial solutions to some of the most important global challenges facing humanity.
I'm ready.
You start the interview.
Okay?
Okay.
So what is my dream?
My dream is to take our scientific discoveries in small dimensions of materials into large dimension of real-world applications.
My big dream for the future is to bring solar energy to our routinely day life.
To move this border between what computers can do and what humans can do.
It'll give us an important tool for preventing diseases, not only cancer, but other diseases as well.
We're trying to harness the superpower of nature.
My dream is to help people suffering from neurodegenerative or mental disease.
To develop a targeted drug to treat and relieve the core symptoms of autism spectrum disorder.
The Hebrew University lets researchers do whatever they dream of doing. There's no other university in Israel that have so many startups and companies.
To be in a university is to stay a kid.
If you want to open new directions and new fields, it's very open and possible.
Well, I'm passionate about changing the world to a better place for our children. Working at the Hebrew University makes me feel like there is nothing we cannot reach.
Revolutionary advances in fields such as science, humanities, law, social sciences, agriculture, and medicine are all made possible thanks to the work being done at Hebrew University. In the coming years, Hebrew University will continue to innovate and address the many challenges facing humanity, from computational medicine and urban innovation to food tech and harnessing the power of quantum science. Hebrew University. It's more than an institution. It's a torch passed on from generation to generation, lighting the way for those who dare to dream.
Okay, and then now we're going to do our slideshow with all the photos that people shared.
נצאנה אל הבוסתה מור בסמים ולבונה לרגלך מפתה ערב של שושני נצאנה אל הבוסתה מור בסמים ולבונה לרגלך מפתה לילה יורד מעל ברוח שושן נושבה הבה אליך שלח שיר בלב זמר של אהבה לילה יורד מעל ברוח שושן נושבה הבה אליך שלח שיר בלב זמר של אהבה שלח שיר בלד זמר של אהבה זמר של אהבה זמר של אהבה
So Miriam, the music wasn't, I don't know if people could hear the music. I had trouble, but that's okay. It just shows for most of us how bad the quality of the pictures we took back then. So, all right.
Yeah, technology was a little different.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to just, for the group here, just going to do a few slides. I'll try to see as many people as I can. So just to review a little bit for all of us. Okay, if you could advance for me, Miriam. Just remember, Israel, so we arrived in 1972 in the second half of the year. I would have asked you a quiz. Who was the president of Israel? It was Salman Shazar. Prime Minister was Golda. Chief of Staff was David Elazar. The population of Israel when we were there was 3,147,000. It's almost 10 million now. In October of 72, little did we know it, Sadat was beginning to prepare for war later. And actually, right before we came, in May of 72, there was the Lod Airport massacre. Next slide. Again, a reminder, what did things cost? Nixon was president. We can all remember that. All in the Family was the #1 show in the United States. The first time I ever saw your face was the #1 song in America that year. The big popular groups, and I know Al and Bruce would remember this, was Loggins and Messina and Seals and Croft were popular singers, and we listened to them a lot in Israel. 1973 was the beginning of the oil embargo, and inflation started to go up to about 13%. And most of you probably were buying your first homes a few years later, and you're probably getting mortgages around 14, 15%. A dollar then is worth $7 today. HP calculator cost $395. Long distance was $30 a minute. I remember when I called my parents twice in the entire year on their anniversary. I called my father. I said, "Dad, how are you?" He said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Get off the phone." $30 a minute was a lot of money in those days. Apollo 17 went up in December when we were in Israel. Gas was 36 cents a gallon, but after the embargo, $1.19. Steak was $2.49 a pound. Milk was 89 cents, and a stamp was 8 cents. Next slide. Then, terrible time for all of us. We remember the Munich Olympics next. All right. 11 Israeli athletes are killed in 1972, Summer Olympics in Munich. Black September invades the Olympic Village. 5 terrorists, 1 German policeman are also killed in a failed rescue. That was I remember going to bed at night thinking they all had been rescued, and then waking up the next morning and seeing the newspaper with all their faces in the newspaper. Next. But as I think Steve said, we were fortunate. We were there during Israel's 25th anniversary in May of 73. Next. And I was fortunate. I think Al was with me at that time. We were fortunate. I had a friend of the family who was a soldier in the Independence War, and he had VIP tickets that he gave me, and we used to watch the parades. And it was probably the height of Israel's, in a sense at that time, maybe hubris, and thinking how strong their army was. This was in the spring of 73, but it was great to watch all the tanks and the Phantom jets flying overhead. And I remember that after the tanks had been on the streets for 3 days, the streets had actually sunk down by about 6 inches. And it was an exciting time to be in Israel. Next. Then, just to review, in February of 73, Libyan Airlines is shot down over Sinai. Israel shoots down a Libyan Airlines. They think it was going to be an attack. Katsir is elected president in April. Maccabiah games are held in July. I had forgotten about Lillehammer affair, where a Mossad assassinates a Moroccan waiter by mistake, and that was a big deal. And then in October, of course, was the Yom Kippur War. And I don't know how many of you were still in Israel, and then I had gone home to get married. And but that was a traumatic event for us. God, 1/1000th was for the Israelis, but it was hard to be in the United States during that time. Next. So what I'd like us to do, I think I sent this enough to all of you. I'm going to go just across the screen, and I just call on you. Tell the group where you're from. Where did you go undergrad? What'd you get your degree in? What'd you do for a career, and are you still doing it? Where do you live now? If you're retired, what are you doing? Are you active in any Jewish organizations? A quick review of your family. And how many times have you been back to Israel, if at all? So I'm going to shrink that.
I'm going to stop sharing so that
okay.
you can see everyone.
Well, actually, Miriam, I was going to leave the questions up. So just screen it, but it's okay. They'll remember. So Ellie Shimon, we're going to start with you. So either unmute yourself or press down your space bar.
Hi. We're having fun here looking at all the faces. Yeah, right. We're waving.
All right. All right. So Ellie, remind us where you're from. Where'd you go to school?
I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I graduated from Madison, Wisconsin. I was here for my junior year.
Yes.
I got what's next? Next
degree.
is,
What's your degree? What's your degree?
My degree. I have a degree, a master's in social work, of which I've been working since I made Aliyah in 78, winter of 78 with Mark. And I've been a social worker all along. I right now work as I work as a geriatric social worker with bereaved families through Misada Bitachon. Work for a private company. And they're the outsourcer for Misada for the Ministry of Defense. So yesterday I was at Har Herzl with one of my American clients who lost a son. And I'm married to Mark. We're going to have our 50th anniversary in a year and 4 months. And we're going to be, what else? We have 3 children and we have 5 grandchildren, and we're in Jerusalem.
Good.
What else? What did I
Wonderful.
forget?
No, that's great.
And until my mother died about a year and a half ago at the age of 100, almost 101, I was traveling back to Milwaukee towards the end 2 or 3 times a year until COVID. And then we had, tough times. I saw her through a glass window.
Oh, God. All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Lee Cranber.
1 sec.
Yes, hi there. Oh, this is great. I'm really glad this was organized. Thank you. So I graduated from Washington University in St. Louis and then went on and got an MD degree and became a neurologist. And I'm now living in Boston and married with 2 children, no grandchildren. And the only time I went back to Israel, well, actually, I was back to Israel twice. Once was as a madrich, like about 2 years after having spent my junior year there, and for a nifty teenage youth group tour. And then the other time was in 1997, and on a Physicians for Human Rights investigation, investigating violent shaking by of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli custody, and studying the brain damage that resulted.
Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you, Lee. All right, Steve Green. We'll unmute you.
Most of you may know me as Buddy. Only the people who didn't like me called me Stephen.
Okay.
But I was blessed to have met my wife, Ruth Schreiber, on our program. We will be married in a year and a half to 50 years. 2 wonderful daughters. One you met, Miriam, and our daughter, Adina, who is now working for the Museum of Discovery and Science in Fort Lauderdale and is in New Orleans on a business trip. I graduated from Brandeis University with my dear friend, Howie Rosenbaum, Rabbi Howard Rosenbaum, and got married in 74. We had to postpone it because when I didn't get into JTS, I went to HUC and they wouldn't let me come in late. So had to kill a year. HUC, I was still much too conservative at that time. So went off in a different direction in Jewish education, became an educational director in North Carolina, which afforded me the opportunity of becoming a volunteer firefighter. I served in North Carolina for 4 years, worked EMS, Guilford County EMS for about 18 months as a fill-in medic. And then we moved to Syracuse, New York, joined another fire department there. Both girls were born there. And I stayed basically in Jewish education and Jewish administration, became an executive director of several synagogues, worked through building campaigns. And then in 92, I was disabled with a back injury and probably was tied to the fire service. And I started doing part-time work, but teaching. That's what I still love to do. A lot of tutoring, B'nai B'not Mitzvah. Still doing it now. I have 2 adult Torah reading classes where we I teach them how to read Torah the right way through a methodology I developed when I was an educational director. And that's what I continue to do. I love to teach. I teach through the fire service as well. I'm a certified state of Florida fire instructor. But I've been under the weather for a couple of years. We didn't have a diagnosis till last September. So working on that and spending as much time as I can with my wife, who will at some point retire, I hope, and spend more time here. And luckily, our daughter Miriam and our son-in-law Jason and our grandson, our first grandchild, Amiel, live about 1.5 miles away.
Oh, good,
So
good.
talk about a blessing. Couldn't ask for more than that. And I would like to can I share the screen for 1 second, Mir, please?
Sure.
Uh,
Are you able to?
I had it. Hold on 1 second. There it is. So I'm not sure why it's not letting me do it. Okay, so I'm not going to kill any time then. But our grandson, who will be 2 years old this coming Monday.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
All right, Sharon Langer.
Hi, so I'm originally from Norwalk, Connecticut, and I went to Hebrew University while I was attending Simmons College in Boston, and Nancy Bojes-Gutman, who's also on this Zoom, she and I were roommates. We went over and she met her husband. I met an Israeli that my parents were fearful I would marry. Didn't happen, but Yoram Lowenstein is his name. If you're in Israel, you might, I don't know if you would know of him, but he, I believe he's founded a theater company that brings together, I think, at-risk youth, I'm not sure, in Tel Aviv. In any event, I've had several careers. Most recently, I was for 20 years, I was a legal aid lawyer. Then I worked for a small nonprofit doing what most people would think of as lobbying on similar issues that I worked on as a legal aid lawyer. Retired twice from that organization, most recently in 2019, and do a lot of informal things, nothing paid. And let's see, what else? I spent 10 years in the Boston area from college on, and then I moved back to Connecticut, live in West Hartford, and am married almost 40 years, and have 2 adult children, no grandchildren yet, a 4th golden retriever. My daughter's got some dogs. And I went back to Israel actually only twice. I would still love to get back there, but I went back because I had an Israeli boyfriend. I went back during whatever we called it back then, between semesters in December 73, January 74, I guess that would have been, to visit with him. And then I went back, actually, Nancy and Fred can correct me if I have the date wrong, but I went back for their first child's bris in, I believe, 1980. My best memory, I have a lot of really positive memories from that year. I don't know if we all had.
Oh, you froze.
Pardon me?
All right.
You froze for a minute.
Oh, I was just saying, in terms of memories, I remember Shimon Perez's daughter, was it Shira, who was our Ulpan teacher. She was fabulous. And I just have many positive memories, including meeting Yoram Lowenstein.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. All right, Marcia, who I have unbelievably great memories of, but Marcia, it's up to you now.
Yeah, wow.
Oh, you're muted again.
You just muted yourself, yeah. No, hold on. One sec. You should be, there we go. Try again. There we
Okay,
go.
hi, Marcia.
Hi, everyone. I want to say the tears, I started crying when I was watching that movie. Oh my God, not your movie, Miriam, not about the Hebrew University, the movie about all of us young. And wow, it's great to see everybody. Judy, I can see you're on. Did you see I sent a picture of you with at your birthday? Anyway, so, and I had completely forgotten about that Jesus Christ Superstar movie that we all were in until I saw it on the slides. So I'm from Chicago, and I still have a Chicago accent. I
Yes.
was at University of Illinois, and I finished something pretty general like Middle Eastern studies, came back to Israel during the Yom Kippur War, and I never have left, and I'm still at the I'm back at the Hebrew University. I worked for a while at the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Israeli Ministry of Industry and Trade, and which is now the Ministry of Economy. I'm still sort of connected there, but I'm teaching something in the International Relations Department and trying to still publish. Let me think, what were some of the other, I have, all my kids are here. I have 3 kids. I have 4 grandchildren. I live in Mevaseret. I do a lot of babysitting in Tel Aviv. I hear about people in Israel a lot, like Andy Epter. I saw she's on, and I see she's a famous actress.
Wow.
I say I know Andrea Epter, and she's laughing. I see she's laughing. And I had a funny story with Phil also. What else do I have to say? I guess, yeah, some of my best memories were at Phil and Al and Bruce's apartment in Malot Dafna.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Yeah. Marcia was this combination of a brilliant woman and Annie Hall. That's the combination. She was so much fun. So much fun.
But the funniest thing is who I'm married to.
Yes. Well, yes.
I'm married to Yaakov Harpaz, who Bruce and Kenny and Phil and all of you guys know. That's really the funniest thing. Anyway, and Roberta. I still see Roberta too. And Nancy and Fred.
So that's wonderful. All right, Al was the best man at my wedding. I probably have been married longer than anybody because I'm about to hit my 50th in 2 months, in 2 or 3 months. But Al was the best man at my wedding and a great roommate. So Al, where's the beard? Where's the beard?
I know, it got very gray. I looked old, so now I look young, right? So, yeah, put me after Marcia. That's fun.
Yeah,
I do want to correct one thing that Phil said in his little talk. He said, it was so expensive to call home. He only called his parents twice. He called Mary every single day. And we only listened to those 2 bands, Seals and Crofts and Loggins and Messina, because that was the only cassette tape we had. So it was the only music we listened to in our apartment. So I'm originally from Massachusetts. I went to undergrad at Syracuse. I had a dual major in political science and religion. My career was in the intelligence side of the government. You can guess who I worked for. It was pretty unique. It took me to lots of different places. I did go back to Israel several times. I had an office in Tel Aviv. And now in retirement, I'm working at the National Air and Space Museum, the Smithsonian. I'm a docent. I give tours and lectures on aerospace history, and I restore old airplanes. I'm living now in Virginia, just outside of DC, and I have a place in Delray Beach, Florida. So if any of you have a place in Florida, maybe we're neighbors. I'm married to Wendy, sitting here next to me. We met at the Library of Congress. We have one child, his son Daniel. He's a graphic designer in New York. So active in Jewish organizations. Well, one of the unique things I guess I do is I developed a Jewish aviation tour at the National Air and Space Museum. So I've given lots of Jewish tours to Jewish organizations. Best memory of the year. I guess the best memory of the year was living in Ma'alot Dafna and sharing an apartment with Phil and Bruce and sometimes Marcia. It was, it was the best time of our lives. I think we were in Israel in 1972-73. We were very smart or very lucky to be there that year because it probably was the best time to be a young person in Israel. We went everywhere. We had no qualms about going anywhere from, from the Med to the Jordan, from the Golan to Ras Mohammed and everywhere in between. Lots of adventures. My only regret from the year is that I couldn't live off of the royalties from Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on. Judy Kessler.
Judy.
Judy, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I just asked her to.
Unmute. Okay. I'll start with the end. We live in, my husband and I live in Rehovot, Israel. We've been here for 30 years. We have 3 kids and 6 grandchildren, all of whom live either in Rehovot or Jerusalem. And all of whom have done at least 1 degree at Hebrew U. After the 1-year program was a very important year for me. And then I went back and finished my degree at University of Louisville. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and then went on to graduate school at Stanford. After that, I worked in engineering. I worked in New Jersey for a while. Then I got married. We moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and we made Aliyah from there. What are the other questions I'm supposed to answer?
Family? Any grandkids?
Yeah, 6 grandchildren.
Wow.
And it's a very important thing. I think it was Al who just said the year we were in Israel was the year of euphoria before pessimism set in. And it was an especially wonderful experience to be part of that. And it gave us a different experience than we would have had, I think, any other year.
All right, thank you. Okay, Deborah Weiss. We have 2 Deborah Weiss, but I assume Deborah, we'll start with you.
With the one on the beach, yes.
Unmute.
Yeah, it just sounds. Beach, Deborah Weiss, can you unmute? No. Are you able to unmute?
Can they hold their space bar down just to do it? Can that do it?
I'm clicking ask to unmute. I think that they have to. I think he's on.
Well, let's go on to Larry and we'll come back to the Larry Tishkoff.
Okay, ask to unmute.
Or Miriam, maybe let's just unmute everybody and it will be okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll take a chance. Hi, Larry. Let's start and then we'll go back.
Oh.
Well, we're not hearing things.
Larry, you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
All right.
Is that any better? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have 2 webcams, so evidently it was connected to the wrong one. Anyway, I want to thank Phil and Miriam for organizing this. I originally came from Los Angeles, California, on the 1-year program, but also a special program from UC. And it was an incredible year. I've been living in Israel since 1977, and I spent many years building Nifty Israel programs for high school and college students. I have a master's in Jewish education from HUC. And for about 17 years, I worked with the United Jewish Communities that became Jewish Federation of North America. Andy Katz and I worked together for many years in organizing visits for donors or potential donors to their Jewish federations. Sharon, I want to tell you that Tzvia Perez I was in that class. It was probably the best class of the summer Ulpan. And I've seen her several times after that. In 1975, I helped to start a Garin, first Reform kibbutz to Kibbutz Yehel on the way down to Eilat, near Arava. My wife and I were the first wedding there, and we have been married for almost 45 years. We have 4 kids, and our 10th granddaughter, or our 10th grandkid, is being born as we speak. Our youngest daughter went into labor a few minutes before this call began. So hopefully after the call, we'll be on our way to Hadassah and Kerem to visit. I have spent most of my adult life in support of Israel in one way or another. I was an Aliyah Shaliach in Los Angeles for 4 years, and I was actually hoot for the Reform movement for a few years, and have spent most of my adult life until 3 years ago working for Tzionut and Zionism. 3 years ago, COVID came and tourists were not permitted to get into Israel, so they closed the department that I was working in because we had no more donors or potential donors to create and implement visits for them because they weren't visiting. So I decided to do something else, and I started a second career, and the last 3 years have been teaching Israeli high school and junior high school teachers who teach in English based on sustainability and global warming. So we do Hishtalmuyot for hundreds of teachers through Zoom, and it's been an interesting ride since then. I think I answered most of the questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Larry. So I'm going to go, Deb, we're going to go you next, then Bruce Wirtz, then Howie Rosenbaum. So go ahead, Deb.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, Deborah Weiss. I am the real Deborah Weiss. The second Deborah, actually Dennis Shaw, who was also with us during that year, who did not get a link, so I sent it to him. So you can click on Dennis afterwards, and hopefully he'll be able to speak. So I after our junior year, I went back to NYU, graduated from there, and following that, I went back to Hebrew U.
Oh,
you just muted. You just got muted.
So did everybody else. There you go. Go ahead.
Okay. I don't know where we got up to. After I graduated from NYU, I went back to Hebrew U to do my master's degree. And there I met my husband, Zvi. We were married as we both completed he was completing his bachelor's degree. I was completing my master's degree at Hebrew University. We lived there for a couple of years and then both came back to Connecticut, which is where we live now in Trumbull, Connecticut. We came back to Connecticut and we both did our PhDs at the University of Connecticut. For those of you who don't know, we are the NCAA champions this year. Go UConn. And we have been back and forth to Israel many times. I retired from my position as a university professor at Southern Connecticut State University in July of last year. And we are now both retired and, as they say, living the life, having a good time. We go to Israel frequently. We're now spending 2 months out of the year.
You just got muted again. And I did not push anything.
Okay, it might be because I'm using the space button. It probably
okay.
So we're living the life as retirees right now. We go to Israel frequently. We're now going 2 months out of the year and spending time in Israel. 2 kids, Gabriel and Naomi, 1 grandson, and 1 on the way. That's about it.
All right, Bruce Wirtz.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I unmuted? Yeah, hi, I realized, can you hear me? I want to make
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
good.
great. I wasn't sure. I know I look like a rabbi, but I was the token non-Jew on the program. I'm in Pittsburgh, and after Israel, I went on to get a master's degree at Yale in theology and biblical studies, and I became a Lutheran minister for 10 years. And during that time, I lived in Holland or the Netherlands for 3 years. I was asked to go there to give some help to the church over there. After 10 years, I decided to do something else. So I left the ministry and I became an executive recruiter. I was a headhunter when nobody knew what a headhunter was. Now everybody does, but I became a headhunter when it was in its infancy. And I recruited mid-level and senior level management, including C-level, for technology. The last several years, it was mostly in software technology. I'm married. My wife, Claudia, is a dual citizen, Germany and the US. It's my second marriage and her second marriage. And we just had a grandson born just a few days ago in Chicago. And we're headed there shortly to visit the family there. I don't know what else I can say except that my year, it was the best year of my life. I mean, it was incredible year. Had so much fun, met so many great people, still in touch with many of them. And that's about it. If anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, we're going to try to move around a little quicker. So Howard Rosenbaum.
It's nice to see everybody. I'm originally from Milton, Massachusetts. I'm now a neighbor of Sharon's in West Hartford, Connecticut. I graduated with Buddy from Brandeis University, went on to the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Philadelphia, and for the past 43 years, I've been working in synagogue education. I'll be married 43 years this year to Cheryl, and we have 3 daughters. And since junior year, I've made 9 trips to Israel, the last of which ended about 2 weeks before the world closed down in 2020.
Good. All right. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Cohen Goldblatt and Bernie, you're next.
Okay. Let's see. First, I just want to comment on all the hair that was exhibited in those photos. Unbelievable. I am from Minneapolis. I have an undergraduate degree from the University of Minnesota, and I have a degree in veterinary medicine, also from the University of Minnesota. Bernie and I met junior year, and we've been married almost 48 years now. And somehow I convinced him to move to Minneapolis, and more or less we've been here ever since. We spent 3 years in Washington, D.C. while he went to law school. We went back to Israel right after the Yom Kippur War and volunteered on Kibbutz Ramat Rachel. And then we left the kibbutz after a while and lived in Jerusalem, found jobs which were very easy to come by then because half the population was, off in the army.
Leslie was a gym teacher, and I worked at Richie's New York Pizza.
I was a practicing veterinarian for 40 years. I just retired in June and sold my 2 clinics, and I'm enjoying retirement very much. Do you want me to talk about the kids?
Sure.
Yes. We have 3 daughters, Talia, Aviva, and Leora. We have 3 grandchildren who live in Chicago. We have 1 soon-to-be grandchild who will live in Dallas. And we have 1 daughter who lives in Minneapolis, not too far from us. We have 3 lovely sons-in-law. And we go to Israel for about the past 15 years. We have gone to Israel annually for a month or so. I hate to say this, but we are traitors to Jerusalem. We go to Tel Aviv every year and love it.
All right. Bernie, you want to just?
Sure. I was at the University of Michigan. Please excuse my voice. I was an early adopter of COVID. Was on a ventilator for 5 weeks and in the ICU for longer. Should not be sitting here, actually.
Yeah.
But I have a tracheostomy. So in any case, I was at the University of Michigan. We actually met August 11th, 1972, the day after I got there. And which means it was the best year of my life. I actually did the most amazing thing, which is my friend Larry Zeidenweber convinced me to buy a motorcycle. And with Larry and Alan Dworsky, we did a motorcycle trip around the Sinai Desert, which you can't do now. And it was phenomenal. Went to law school at George Washington University. Moved to Minneapolis. After 2 years, paroled myself from the practice of law. Went into business for 25 years. Then ended up as executive director of a conservative synagogue with 1,200 households for 20 years. Retired in January, got COVID in March, and frankly, seeing all of you and seeing those pictures has been a thrill. Thank you.
It's good to have you, Bernie. Good to now.
Thank you.
Andrea, you're going to be next, but I'm Elliot. Elliot's got to leave soon, so if people have to leave, and I know we're trying to move it quick, so we'll do Elliot Goldman, then Andrea will follow. Go ahead, Elliot.
Thanks. I'll be really quick. I'm from New York. After the one-year program, I actually stayed. I transferred to the regular studies, did my BA and then MA at Hebrew University, and then worked for 2 years at Shaare Zedek in consultation liaison psychiatry. Came to back to New York, did my doctorate in clinical psychology, and then have worked at Columbia and Long Island Jewish, and I'm now working at the New York City Department of Health. A lot of my work is around community mental health and working with children in crisis. I'm married to a psychologist. I have a daughter who's doing a graduate degree in journalism. It was a great year, and it's great seeing everyone. The highlight for me was the trip to Sinai. I do have to say, Phil, you were in my old punk class with Al, and that was quite something, watching all of us struggle to kind of get the hang of Hebrew, and but we did it. I think we did as well as we could. So thanks for letting me go. Really appreciate it, and be well, everyone.
Thank you. What's pathetic is I had 10 years of Hebrew school. Al had 0, and we were about the same level. So let's Andrea. We'll go to Andrea, then Cindy, Sarah. Go ahead, Andrea.
Okay, so I'm originally from Buffalo. I did my undergraduate at NYU. Debbie Weiss was my roommate, and Bev Khan Rose. She and I were the entire department of, what was it, Hebrew culture and education at NYU. So we graduated together. I came here in 74, but according to the Ministry of the Interior, because of the type of visa that we were asked to take out, I started my immigrant rights in 1972. So when I came to apply as a citizen, get my rights, they said, no, you have nothing. So I didn't get anything. But I did my MA in what's called in Hebrew it's Yadut Zmanenu, or contemporary jewelry. My mother thought it was contemporary jewelry and kept waiting for a bracelet and never got it. And basically since the day I arrived, I've been involved in Jewish education in the diaspora. I call it educational tourism. I worked with Larry Tishkoff for 12 years at the federations. We were both what they call mission managers dealing with groups that come over. Presently, I write content for a large commercial tourism company called IGT. I have, so I do educational tours. It's not look to your right, look to your left, but it's, excuse me, it's more than that. I have 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren. And my husband was the urban planner for a neighborhood called Neve Yaakov and did miraculous things. It's primarily a Haredi community. We are not Haredi. We actually belong to a synagogue where Eli and Mark are also members. It's a synagogue, a very unusually an Orthodox synagogue that's liberal politically and religiously, a bunch of superannuated hippies that somebody forgot to tell us that the 60s are over. And as Marcia mentioned, I'm very active in the English-speaking theater community. I do Shakespeare in the Park every summer and a few other plays during the year. So
Wonderful, wonderful. We're going to Cindy.
Marcia player.
Oh, right. Okay. So what she mentioned, once a month, I put on a play in Hebrew with adults. Mark is one of them, and children on Parshat HaShavua in our synagogue. And we actually have more members coming to that than we do to prayer. So that's
wow. Good. Cindy, you're next, and then I'm going to have Michael Frewer has to go after you. So go ahead, Cindy. Sarah.
Yes, it's good to see everybody. A lot of familiar faces. That year, I roomed after Shikunei Elef in the Ulpan. We roomed Adina Kling, Donna Feinberg, and Marilyn, who's on. Also, we roomed together on Hatzibonim, Herzog Street in an apartment all year. And it was a wonderful, wonderful year. It was the year that we developed the chocolate cake without eggs because there were no eggs that year, if you remember. I come originally from Albany, New York. I graduated from Tufts University and I made Aliyah in 1973. I've been here ever since. I was married to David Breakstone for 24 years, and now I'm married to Joel Brawner for 22 years, and everything is great. We have, believe it or not, what did I do in my career? I was the Aliyah Klita counselor at AACI for many years. I worked in Partnership 2000 for 8 years, and I was an ESL teacher for 16 years. I'm still teaching today on Zoom though. I'm married, as I said. I have 3 children and 15 grandchildren.
Whoa.
And 3 stepchildren. So that adds to the population, as you can imagine, but they're all beautiful, delicious, and they give us a lot of happiness. I'm living in Ra'anana now. When Joel and I, the second marriage, got married, we decided to leave Jerusalem and we moved to Ra'anana, and we are thrilled in Ra'anana and very happy, have a nice house here, lots of animals, lots of grandchildren, and lots of people around. I'm in touch with Andy still. Marcia Harpaz was a neighbor of mine in Jerusalem many, many years ago when I lived in Jerusalem. Judy, I'm in Robkin. We've been in touch by email over the years. Lee Pascoe, I remember you. And let's see what else. Stuart, Marilyn and Stuart. And what else? I haven't been to Israel many times because I really have never left Israel. I live here even with what's going on today. And that's the end of the story. I hope it's not actually.
Thank you. Michael, and then Judy to follow. Michael.
Thank you. It was very nice to see everybody. I'm Michael Foyer. I grew up in Queens, went to Queens College and came on this program in my senior year, which was an interesting thing to pull off because I majored in English and found that at the Hebrew University, the quality of the English instruction was really even higher than what I had been accustomed to. It was a wonderful year. I had a wonderful roommate from California, some of you may remember, Josh Needle. We shared an apartment down on Rehov Brody, which was a great place to be. I stayed in Israel after the one-year program and became a madrich in the Resnick dorms for the following year, which was an interesting time to be working with overseas students because it was, of course, the Yom Kippur War and the aftermath. And we organized all kinds of volunteer brigades to go into the hospitals, and I ended up actually being a substitute teacher in a fourth grade elementary classroom in Jerusalem for part of that time. Fast forward, I met my wife in August of that year. She was visiting her sister who was a student in one of my dorms, and we've been together ever since. We moved back to Paris to be with her for a year there, and then decided to come back to the States. I went to the University of Pennsylvania for my doctoral degree and have been in Washington now, Washington, D.C. for the last 36 years. I'm currently the Dean of the Ed School at George Washington University. I know we have CW alum on the screen somewhere here. I heard that somebody say that. And I do a lot of work with Israel and in Israel. I'm there at least a couple of times a year. I've organized some partnerships between GW and some campuses in Israel. I'm involved with the Israel Academy of Sciences. I'm doing some advising with the Sachnut. And I have two children. Sarah, who made Aliyah 5.5 years ago, is happily married, not married, happily living in Tel Aviv, not yet married, a Freudian slip. And my son, Jonathan, who lives here outside of Washington, D.C., also spent 5 years as a student in Israel and then came back. It's great to see everybody, and good luck to all.
Good. Thank you, Michael. Judy with the greatest wonderful laugh I remember from 1972. Just a beautiful laugh.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm in Atlanta, graduated from WashU in St. Louis, and met my husband in diapers. My parents were at his bris, and but we got together because of the Yom Kippur War. We both dropped out of college to go over to Israel to help out, and both independently were told not to go, that there were too many volunteers and they didn't know what to do with them. But we got together and eventually married. After college, we made Aliyah immediately after getting married and stayed there for 8.5 years, 8.5 wonderful years. And I founded the very first bookstore coffee shop in Israel called Sefer V'Sefel, and it's still there 40 years later. We had to move back because my mother-in-law was not well, but we go back all the time, except since COVID. We've only been back once since COVID, but we'll be back soon. And I am an artist and an art teacher, which was a later in life thing that I got into. I have 3 kids and 9 grandchildren. I have 2 sons who are both Orthodox rabbis, and my daughter is an epidemiologist. And I think that's about it.
Wow. It's good to see you, Judy. Henry.
Hi, originally from the Boston area, then followed my wife, Deborah Klinger, who is still teaching, to Albany. Graduated Boston University with a bachelor's, worked a year as a Vista volunteer in an experimental program in Newton. So I was getting $50 while the average income in Newton at the time was about $200,000. Then was teaching tennis for a couple of years. I was the head tennis coach at Radcliffe. Then looked down one summer, my burnt body, and said, I can't do this. And I went back to graduate school, graduated Boston University School of Social Work, worked with children, youth, and families for the first few years, and then got into state mental health programs. Worked as a director up in Albany, forensic coordinator. Debbie and I have 3 children. The youngest had a reading disability, so we had to look around for a day school that could accommodate him. That led to our move to the Muncie area in New York. Because of my connections at the commissioner's office, I was able to transfer my position, served as chief of service at the largest state hospital in New York. Also ran the inpatient service at the Nathan Klein Institute for Psychiatric Research, researching on aggression. Fascinating because one day I was doing a consult on another unit and I got literally clobbered. So I am fused after multiple surgeries from C3 all the way through the sacroiliac joint, which has made travel and movement very difficult. After the 4th surgery, the neurologist said, "That's it, you're out of work." So for 10 years now, I've been disabled. My specialties while I was working were forensic services, traveled around the state of New York consulting for the commissioner on privileges and eventual discharges for the criminally insane, with a subspecialty trained by the National Institute of Corrections in assessing and treating sexual offenders, which is where my private practice focused on. I traveled and served as an expert witness in Massachusetts and throughout New York State for 20 years. Also taught at the University of Albany Graduate School, and when we moved down here, taught at Wurzweiler School of Social Work for 6 or 7 years.
Nice, good.
We have 3 children. One granddaughter who will be 11 later this week with flaming red hair, which matches her personality. One of, I won't say highlight of my life, but certainly turning point of my life was I was down here in Rockland County on 9/11. By 1 o'clock that day, me and 11 other volunteers were downtown New York doing emergency mental health counseling and services, which I continued for about 3 months. Unfortunately, that resulted in asthma, 2 cancers, one of which reoccurred 3 times. Fortunately, I'm now in remission. Debbie retired from teaching last year and then was recruited back because they couldn't find a teacher. Sucker that she is, she went back for that year and hopefully will be retired on June 17th of this year. I can't do much traveling, but prior to getting injured, had been back to Israel multiple times. Our eldest son was a founder of several yeshuvim. The last was Miva Ot Yericho, which I believe was just recently made officially legal. He's got a PhD in education. Our daughter was until recently working for the New York State Bar Association, and our youngest is an urban planner in the city of Albany.
All right. Well, Henry,
Great to
thank
see
you.
everybody.
Thank you. I actually, spending the years 72 and 73 with us probably prepares you for working with the criminally insane. So, Harry, is it Rabbi Manoff, by the way?
Well, you gotta unmute.
Unmute.
There we go. Am I unmuted now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, it is Rabbi Manoff. But I go by Harry now because I've been retired for quite a while. I can't convince the people at the synagogue to call me Harry. They still call me Rabbi Harry. But I'm just a Jew in the pew now. I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey. Went to Yale. Spent my junior year with all of you. Met Barbara King, who we married after graduating from college. So that would make it June 74. Because I thought going back to rabbinical school, I should be married to the woman I was living with rather than some of my classmates who just came with their girlfriends. But that was the way it was back then. I was ordained. I continued at Columbia, did not finish my PhD there. Moved eventually to California, transferred to UCLA, did not finish my PhD there. Applied to HUC's PhD in Jewish education, got in, and then the program was canceled. And so eventually, when the congregation in San Luis Obispo could no longer afford to give me a raise, they said, take us another day off. I said, oh, Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going to start taking classes in Santa Barbara. So I went back to Barbara's alma mater, to UCSB, and finally finished my PhD in 32nd grade. I have my undergrad degree is in philosophy of religion. This one was in comparative religions. I didn't know that when I applied to the program. So I wrote my dissertation on the New Testament. And
Wow.
it was because I didn't care where the research led me. And I wrote this for 8 years. And when I was finished, I don't know why I was so objective, but Jesus ended up to be a Reform rabbi just like me. So I don't know how that happened, but it did. Back to 74, 72, 73, I met Barbara. She was making a phone call from the international phone call at the post office, if you remember. She was telling her mother she wanted to come home. She hated it. I met her literally as she walked out the door. We started dating, and now we'll be celebrating our 50th in next June, a year from June. And we have 3 children. One, our daughter, who was president of NIFTY, also did the year abroad from the UC program. And she's now a 7th and 8th grade teacher. My middle son, my middle child is works in medical marijuana. If any of you are in pain, let me know. And thank you, Henry. I like the thumbs up. And my youngest owns a comic book store. We collected comic books for 25 years, had 25,000 comic books in our house. I said, get them out of my house. He opened the store. And so we have this hobby. We've been doing it for years. As you can see from my background, if you remember, that's the model of Jerusalem from the Holy Land Hotel, now at the Israel Museum. I always say I'm much more comfortable in first century Jerusalem than anywhere else in the world, but I live in Berkeley, sometimes known as Berkeley. I have 3 granddaughters. One lives downstairs. We have a multi-generational house here. And the other 2 live 5 miles from here. So we are truly blessed to be close to our kids. I've been back to Israel numerous times, besides the year for HUC. I led a tour of 40 16-year-olds. That's when I was young and stupid. I've been back for a sabbatical. I've been back for a family tour. I've been back for my most recent trip. No, there was a rabbinical tour from the Bay Area. My most recent trip, we were invited as guests of a very fundamentalist Catholic group in the Galilee. I can't even remember the name of the group, but it was a fascinating visit. And let's see, my life now revolves around MSNBC and Daf Yomi. I'm a member of the Bethel congregation, where I am an active member and on a number of committees. I'm still involved in my rabbinical organizations. I was one of the founding members of Trua. Actually, we were the first group of rabbis for human rights when we were in Jerusalem in the first year of the Intifada. I was on sabbatical there, and we started the Rabbis for Human Rights. And finally, my best memory was Shabbat in Jerusalem. When there was no room in the dorms, we had to find a place that we could afford it. $18 a month was what the dorms cost. So we ended up living in Nachlaot, very, very poor neighborhood behind Hamashpir, a Yemenite neighborhood where I learned to keep kosher with 1 set of dishes, because that's the way they do it. On Shabbat, when everybody was stuck up on the hill and there was no place to go to daven, we'd have 10 or more people sleeping on the floor in our 2 rooms apartment, and everybody would go to shul for Kabbalat Shabbat, come back, we had dinner, we sang. Next morning, people scattered to various synagogues. We were within walking distance of 10, 20 different synagogues. If you got up early, you went to an Orthodox shul. If you got up a little bit later, you went to the conservative. And if you got up like me, we went to the Reform synagogues. And then we came back and we spent the whole afternoon in Torah study until the whistle blew, and then we went to the movies. So besides meeting Barbara and making a commitment to her for the rest of my life, that Shabbat was the best memory of my life.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the group, because we're getting This will probably go up to 2 hours, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance. So if we can cut down a little bit of what we're saying, please do. So we're going to do Henry Schreibman next, then Lee after that. Go ahead, Henry. You're muted.
You're muted. No, I think you have to unmute again.
Everybody seems.
Now?
All right.
Yep.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I've been making my living doing Zooms teaching, so why should it work here? I'm intrigued to see what you all look like now, and I wish the hell we had a picture of what we looked like then so I could correlate it. My fondest memories were Mark Rudolph, who's a rabbi now, social worker then. Fred and Nancy and I were like bonded like this, Fred and I with music. I thought maybe Nancy would be an interesting girlfriend. It didn't work out, and they worked out. So I'm intrigued to see who and what they look like now. A buddy of mine was David Dishon from the year before, and I ended up going back with so many credits. I left, you know, up on Har Hatzofim. I went down to Givat Ram, and I lived in Hakiryah, and I took an all Hebrew program. So I left with so many credits. I got out of college early, but some of these names may be familiar to you. Like Manhoff, I'm more comfortable in Bayit Sheni than I am being an American or watching Israeli politics now. You know what I mean? So Lee Levine, I took art history and archaeology with. David Flusser, New Testament. I worked with some non-Jewish scholars in the New Testament, and I worked with Juki Arkin doing mime. So what emerged for me out of Hebrew University was a 35, 36-year career being a mime all over Europe, all over America, all over Canada, and at all the festivals in Jerusalem and Israel in that period. And I then went back to Israel for 3 years at an early iteration of Amitei Yerushalayim. I was Machzor Bet, where you stayed 3 years being yelled at by Seymour Fox, if that means anything to you. And it set me off in a career of Jewish education as well as mime and academics. So I started the Jewish Studies program at Sonoma State about 15 years ago. It still rocks, albeit remotely. I was at Dominican University across the bay from Manhoff, teaching New Testament, Greek, Latin, Hebrew, and such. My academic work was completed at Columbia. I have 2 kids, both who are in performing arts. So there's a Jesse Schreibman, who's a prominent drummer in the Seattle scene and music that I can't stand, but I love the boy. And David Schreibman, Jesse was born in Jerusalem during Amitei Yerushalayim. David Schreibman is one of the best break dancers in the world. So the careers interloped, interfashioned, and they're just intriguing human beings. I went on to be the headmaster at a day school, never saw that coming. So for 13 years, I was the headmaster at Brandeis Hillel Day School, 2 campuses, very interesting. We started a middle school trip to Israel, which then became contagious on both sides of the Mississippi, where middle school students from day schools would go. So I'm retired. Everybody thought I wouldn't. I did it. I played trumpet 2 to 3 hours every other day. I got a hip replacement because of all the miming and dancing. I just got that over with 20 days ago. So if you need to be an old hippie, you can get a new hippie. I loved listening to all of you, and I'd love to hear from you privately.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to go to Lee and then Beverly Rose. And we don't need to hear if you've had your colonoscopies every 5 years, by the way, because I'm a gastroenterologist by training. Hi, Lee. Let's go on to Lee.
Thank you, Phil, for organizing this. I'm originally from Vermont. I graduated from Boston University. And in '74, I made Aliyah. I went to Bar Ilan to study social work for 2 years. And then I worked for 8 years as a community social worker. I worked in Neve Yaakov before it was Haredi, and I also worked in Nachlaot. Then I returned in '84, and I got a master's in library science at Simmons. I worked in the software industry as a market researcher. And then I retired from Emory University as a business librarian. I'm divorced and I'm living in Atlanta. I take flute lessons in retirement, art classes at Georgia State, and I tutor refugees. The best thing that I remember from Hebrew U is, first of all, going to class on Christmas, and then Sharm el-Sheikh, seeing the stars and outside. That was the best. And I've been back to Israel about 3 to 4 times.
Thank you, Lee. Beverly.
I'm going to let Nate go first.
All right, let's starting off with what was my favorite memory of being in Israel. And I'll tell you right now, my favorite memory was that wonderful trip to Hezekiah's pool and through the tunnel to the pool at the other end. And of course, when we got there, the gate was locked. So I remember it was me and Bertie and Warren Green, and I think Al, you were in it, and I don't remember who else. We got up there and we broke down the gate. That was fun. And I think, Bernie, I believe you're the one who went after the gatekeeper, and I think, Al, you're the one the police went after, if I remember correctly. That was the best that could ever be. But of course, afterwards, it was on the that I met Beverly on the bus. So it had other benefits as well, and that was the good part. Other than that, you know, came out, went through, finished Rutgers, went on to rabbinical school, worked in synagogues, either as ed director or rabbi, and in the ending years, moved over to chaplaincy in a hospice. And I'll let Beverly continue with the rest of the story.
Okay, I should have gone first because I could never be as funny as he is. I originally was from Bridgeport, Connecticut, NYU with Debbie Weiss and Andy, and went on to get a master's in Jewish education from JTS and went in reading from Nazareth College of Rochester. Most of my life I spent in Jewish education, sometimes teaching in a public school, but always with teaching Hebrew or something Jewish. And then later years, I actually taught secular classes, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade mostly, but it was always in Jewish day schools, occasionally in a public school that offered Hebrew as a language. I pretty much retired now, except I have to leave in about half an hour to go teach Hebrew school 1 day a week. And basically we moved to Miami about 23 years ago. We lived in Rochester, New York for 16 years. And then first we lived in New Jersey, then we lived in Rochester, and we've been in Miami now for 20 something years. We have 3 kids, 2 are married. We have 5 grandchildren. They're all successful. One of them, by the way, has a comic book business. You know, so we should get together with Harry. But
the books are still in the house.
Yeah, the books are sitting, boxes sitting in I could take a picture of all the boxes ready to go out in my living room right now. But basically, the 2 of us have stayed in Jewish education and, you know, working in synagogues our whole life. And even as we're retired now, we're involved in a synagogue, a conservative synagogue down here now. And even though we don't necessarily want to get involved in the politics, somehow or other, they call us and ask us our opinions and things like that, and recruited me to teach Hebrew school. So I just want to wish everybody Yom HaAtzmaut Sameach. It was, in some ways, it was a great day to pick. For the people in Israel, I hope we didn't take you away from celebrating or from one of the protest rallies.
All right, and Al, since we have a daughter and 3 grandchildren up in Arlington, Virginia, we'll have to catch your tour.
All right, good. All right, let's go on with Bruce, my other roommate. Bruce, then we're going to go to Marilyn and then Peter. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, Phil, nice job organizing this. It's pretty emotional watching all the photographs early on. They really brought back a lot of memories, so we really appreciate you doing this. I grew up in New Jersey. I live in Westchester County now. I graduated from Syracuse University, majored in poli-sci and religious studies, not having any idea where that would take me. But it did take me to Israel for the junior year. And that was probably one of the highlights of my life, living on Sderot Levi Eshkol with Phil and Al and Steve, and being together with Toby and Marcia, Kenny, Roberta, Ellie, Mark, many others. Marcia, give a shout out and shalom to Yaakov.
Yeah.
One of the fastest guys on the basketball court. He couldn't shoot worth a damn, but boy, could he run. Peak experience. dancing on the beach at Ras Muhammad. It was a full moon. There were no drums. So everybody was banging on pots and pans, singing "Oh Say Shalom," and dancing the night away. It was just an incredible night. Another great memory, shooting Jesus Christ Superstar in the desert and skipping Ulpan altogether. So those in the first Ulpan stayed at exactly that 0 level, but we were doing well in the film industry. And exploring Jerusalem with Bibles in hand, taking an Old Testament and New Testament, and just saying, so this is where it really happened. Here's where the Last Supper and the Passover Seder was. It's just the Stations of the Cross. Every incident, every experience was just fantastic. My career was in marketing and advertising. Spent 18 years at the New Jewish Home, focusing on independent living and long-term care. I'm now consulting in the senior living field, which I guess is appropriate now that I've got some gray hair and 70 years behind me. I've been married to my wife, Audrey, for 38 years. We have 2 sons. One was officially married last week in Providence, Rhode Island. The pandemic back porch ceremony a couple of years ago. So they did the real thing with rabbi officiating. It was great. And I spent many years as a trustee and a VP on our temple board and involved in rabbi searches and all the like. So it's really been a good run. Thanks again, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Chag Yom Ha'atzmaut to everyone. And again, Phil, great job.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, Marilyn, then Peter, then Michael. Or is it Stuart? Go ahead. All right, let's try it again. All right. Stuart and Marilyn will. Oh, go ahead.
Okay, I think I figured it out. Okay, I'm Stuart Cole, went to Johns Hopkins, Boston College Law School, then joined the Army for 3 years, and then worked at the Ohio Attorney General's office. After law school, I re-met Marilyn Zussman, who has been my wife for a long time, and we're happily married, 3 children, 9 grandchildren. We live in Cleveland most of the year, probably 4 months a year in Israel. We're in Israel right now. We have an apartment in Rehovot, a block away from our daughter and very near our son. Our 3rd child in Cleveland plans to make Aliyah this summer. Here's my wife, Marilyn.
I have my master's in social work. Yeah, Marilyn Zussman Cole. I have my master's in social work, worked as a clinical social worker, currently retired. And as Stuart said, we're living now in Cleveland, and we spend a lot of time, we have an apartment in also Florida and in Israel. And I have very, very good memories from our junior year at Hebrew U. Thanks.
Thank you. Peter, then Michael, then Ellen. Peter.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Peter Lurie. I live in Miami. Moved here when I was 9, basically grew up here. I went to Boston University. From a Zionist family, decided I might want to make Aliyah. Went to the Hebrew University my junior year. I didn't spend much time with most of you because I ended up being given a role in Jesus Christ Superstar and left the university for basically 6 months making the movie. Okay, those of you who live in Boston, they are having the 50th cast reunion of the movie. Ted Neely, who is Jesus, Larry Marshall, who was Simon Zelots, Bob Bingham, who was Caiaphas. They're going to be at the Regent Theater in Arlington, June 21st and 22nd. And I sent a little thing if you want to see it. I haven't seen these people for 50 years. I had a French girlfriend that I met at the Hebrew University that lived, remember we had alternating floors, men and then women on the other, the half floor, and then men. She was there. I met her. At the time, fell in love. Ended up getting engaged after we left Israel. That didn't work up. work out. We broke up, but I'm still in touch with her. It was the best. I think it was the best year of my life, and as many of you feel the same way. I did have a car in Israel. Gave me the ability to because you were allowed to get one car if you were thinking about making Aliyah without paying taxes. So I decided not to wait. I took the car, and I was able to drive around, and gave me a lot of mobility. I ended up moving to the Gavat Ram campus. Never finished the Ulpan because of the movie. So many of you I didn't have a lot of experiences with. I had my French girlfriend moved in with me. I had 2 Arab Israeli roommates, 1 Christian, 1 Muslim, and 2 Israeli Arab Jews. I became very friendly with the Christian Arab Israeli roommate, who I used to go to his house in Rama Village. I still keep in touch with him. Okay. The small village near Safat. I did go down to the Sinai, did a trip down there to Rosh Mohammed, went in the water, saw a 6-foot barracuda, scared the hell out of us, and ended up jumping out of the water and coming back on the beach trying to be cool. Of course, me and my friend's girlfriend said, "You see a barracuda?" They were right. Remember, we had a whole month off for Passover, so I did a trip down to Kenya and Tanzania, and which was a fabulous trip. Used Israel to go as a jumping off point for various different trips I took. Explored the whole country, had a fabulous time. Ended up coming back to Boston. Was 1 credit short of graduating because I never finished, my studies for that year and didn't get any credit. Was friendly with the counselor, and he asked me what I did in Israel, and I told him I made a movie, Jesus Christ Superstar. He gave me credit for making a movie, which was enough for me to be able to graduate from that. I had a family business in Miami. A true story. Oh, by the way, one last thing.
Peter, you got to move ahead.
Okay, one last thing, and then I'll move. Some of you may remember, but instead of shipping everything back to the States when we finished, I ended up going down to the Jaffa Gate, and inside the Jaffa Gate with my girlfriend, laid out a blanket and sold all my stuff, mostly to the American tourists. Came back and told buddies of mine at the Hebrew University to do the same thing the junior year. They went down, a couple of them, the next day. They came back really pissed off at me because the Arab policemen fined them for selling stuff without a permit. And so they ended up not selling anything and paying money. Anyway, it's a pleasure to see everybody. Thank you very much, Phil and Miriam, for organizing this.
All right, thank you. Michael, then Ellen, then Robbie Berman. Michael, go ahead.
You're at unmute.
You mean me? Am
Oh,
I the
Michael?
Michael?
I had Michael Mayerson.
Oh, pardon me.
Got it. So I came to Hebrew University from Arizona State. We had just moved to Arizona and went back to graduate from ASU. As Harry Manhoff may remember, I referred to it as the Yale of the West to his significant displeasure. But then I went back to Jerusalem for my first year of rabbinic school, along with Harry and Fred Gutman, a few other people, and then spent my career as a congregational rabbi, mostly, making several trips back to Israel with interfaith groups especially, and then was finally tired of going to committee meetings. So I stopped working as a congregational rabbi about 20 years ago and began teaching classes, mostly here in Orange County, where I live, California, teaching classes to Christians, about 40 or 50 churches, about the Jewish roots of Christianity and a Jewish view of the New Testament. That was lots of fun. Met some interfaith tours to Israel over the years, a number of them, so that Christians would actually see Jewish sites in Israel, which otherwise they typically would not see. Married with 3 children, 3 grandchildren. The oldest just celebrated becoming bat mitzvah in January, so that was plenty of fun. Really, my highlight of the year was camping out in Caesarea and otherwise traveling around the country in the Sinai experience, which was amazing. And right now, the Jewish highlight of my life is through my wife, Karen, who creates custom designed talitot for people all over the country, mostly bar and bat mitzvah students. So that's been fun. I always say that we create them together because I do the tzitzit, but she does all the creative parts. So that's been fun. But really the highlight after I had congregations in Massachusetts, a brand new congregation, then here in Southern California, but teaching the classes and now doing life cycle celebrations, weddings, b'nai mitzvah, funerals, baby namings, all that stuff, which allows me to avoid meetings because I decided it was finally enough of having meetings. That's about it.
Michael, can you send the website for your wife's talitot business? All right, we're going to go to Robbie, then Kenny, Helen, and then Michael Glatzer. Go ahead, Robbie.
Okay. Hi, nice to hear all these great stories. I'm originally from St. Louis, came to Hebrew University from Oberlin College. And the best part is that everyone remember Chaim Shibi, my husband. He was our madrich in Resnick. And so we are together. Next year, it's 50 years. And I went on to, we went to Columbia, Missouri to do our master's degrees. I in social work, in journalism, and then came back to Jerusalem and lived near where we were in French Hill, Samarita Birva. So I'm a clinical social worker, and I worked at Hadassah, and then we had a shlichut in Washington, and then came back and I worked with Holocaust survivors at the organization called Amcha the last 25 years. I retired last summer. I also worked with bereaved parents, and Ellie was telling you, and reconnected with Ellie, working at the same organization. Amazing work, a lot of work with trauma, and but very moving and very special experience, meeting all the survivors, their stories, and the bereaved parents. That's part of me. I have 3 children and 3 granddaughters, another one on the way. What else can I tell you? My favorite experience was, I think, Sinai and Sharm el-Sheikh. And also the following year, my husband and I took a group from St. Louis, actually from Nifty, a group of teenagers back to all over Israel and to Sinai. So that was a great experience. And now enjoying retirement. And it's just kind of the beginning, so I'm not sure. It's just great to be able to have free time after working so intensely with so much trauma, too much trauma in this country, and try to connect to also lots of positive energy and different ways. So great to see everybody. Anybody coming to Jerusalem, happy to be in touch and welcome you.
All right, thank you. We're going to go Kenny next, and then I got a request from Sandra Landis. She's got to go soon. So Kenny, good to see you, and tell us what's been going on.
You too, Phil. I think the last time I saw you, Phil, was out in Minnesota. We went to your wife's cousin's home, if you remember.
My wife's
cross-country skiing.
Yes.
I am a Jersey boy through and through. having gone to Rutgers and Rutgers Law School, and now practicing attorney for 45, 46 years. This sort of reminds me of doing an opening in front of a jury because I don't know half the faces. And I don't remember many of you, but there are a few I do remember. And finding out where, with one of my questions, where Yaakov is these days was the highlight of today for me. I know where Avi Nagar is because Avi was the other person in my life there. Let's see, I told you where I went to school, what I do. I'm still practicing attorney in New Jersey, doing litigation. I am married 40 years. I have 2 children. One lives in, of all places, Park City, Utah. But there is a synagogue in Park City, Utah, which is actually quite beautiful. My daughter lives here in Livingston, New Jersey. I have identical twin girls from my daughter, and I have 2 boys from my son. My active Jewish organization is my family. I don't have the educational background or wherewithal as many of you seem to exhibit, and I'm very proud of all of you, but not so proud of myself sometimes for this. I wound up in Israel. It's sort of an odd story because I was in the jazz ensemble at Rutgers. We did a mutual concert with professional recording artists. The guy told me, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking to maybe go overseas, going to England. He was from England. He says, don't go to England, go to Israel. The guy was not Jewish, wound up in Israel, didn't know what a Zionist was, and got off the plane. So for me, it was quite an eye opener. My parents were more of the workman's circle socialist bent than they were of the actual Zionist bent. My memories are, I'll just throw these out to you. Bruce Nathanson, Ellie Tzor, remember them, our basketball team. The Sinai trip. I was actually asked to stay in Israel by Arik Einstein. I don't know who knows Arik Einstein or who remembers Arik Einstein, but he wanted me to join his band. I said, nah, I got to go back and finish school. Some decisions you make in your life, you look back and say, whoa, that was one of the woes. But I don't really regret it. Jesus Christ Superstar, climbing Masada at nighttime and sleeping over there at night, which I don't think we were supposed to do. I met, incredible people. I remember confusing the word "coos" for "kos" in the store, and that didn't go over real well. My Hebrew was never that great. Henry Schreiman, I remember being on the roof crew at the Sinai trip. But all in all, it was probably one of the most amazing years of my life. For those faces I don't remember or don't recognize, I'm sure you don't recognize mine, having aged and lost my hair. But I do wish you all good health, and I'm so happy for Phil that you were able to pull this off.
Danny, I miss that hair. You had great blonde hair.
Yeah, I'll tell my kids about it. They don't believe me. And my grandchildren certainly don't.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do Helen, Ellen, and Michael. We're almost done. So, all right, Helen, please. By the way, Kenny, your voice is exactly the same, though.
Yeah, very. Thanks, Phil. It's still very nasal.
Yeah, I would have never recognized you, but the voice came back immediately.
Okay, you ready for me? Does it work?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota, like you. It's Helen Mintz-Eikowitz. My maiden name was Mintz. I went to the University of Minnesota, graduated from University of Minnesota with a major in English education, high school, and a minor in Hebrew. And when I got out of college, there was no jobs available for teachers. And so I worked at the Jewish Theological Seminary. I moved to New York and worked at the Jewish Theological Seminary. And then I knew the principal of a Jewish day school, and I got into aerobics. And I knew a principal at a Jewish day school, and they needed a gym teacher. So for 32 years, I was a gym teacher at a Jewish day school, and it was the best choice of my life. I loved every minute of it. It was great. I could create my own program. I got, I had a lot of friends with the teachers, and a lot of the kids enjoyed me. That's all I can say. I've been married for 45 years. And he actually happened to be a roommate of my brother's at Skokie Yeshiva. And we have 2 children, and we have one lives in Israel and one child in Wesley Hills, New York, Muncie, New York. We have 8 grandchildren, 5 of them in Israel. So we spend 5 months a year in Israel and 7 months a year in Teaneck, New Jersey, where we've been living for 45 years. And we retired about 6 years ago, so that's how we can spend 5 months in Israel. It's just great. Retirement is great. We traveled a lot until COVID. We really enjoyed it. And I have very, very, very fond memories of my year at Hebrew University. Everybody's mentioning the Sinai trip. That was really a highlight, but it was just really the people and hanging out in the dorm. And it was just really a wonderful year.
Well, thank you. Sandra, Sandra, then Ellen, then Michael, so I forgot.
So it's hard to know where to start. Israel for me was probably 72, 73, the best year of my life, like so many of you have said. And it changed the course of everything I did afterwards. I came back to the University of Massachusetts and I majored in Hebrew. I didn't know one word of Hebrew when I went to Israel in 72. I taught Hebrew later on for 7 years in Highland Park, Illinois. So I finished at the University of Massachusetts in archaeology and art and got my PhD and master's at the University of Chicago in the Oriental Institute, which just changed its name last week. And my degree was in Northwest Semitic philology, the study of the earliest Semitic languages. And I wrote a grammar book of the earliest Hebrew inscriptions from the 10th to the 6th century BCE. Same time, I went to Spertus College of Judaica and the University of Illinois for education. And then I taught, like I said, and in 1985, well, I can backtrack a little bit. I met my husband also at the University of Chicago. We were living in International House. And Harry, you know Bob Gogel very well. He's my husband for 47 years. And we have 4 kids. Sarah married David, a French guy, and lives in Paris with our 2 grandchildren, Naomi and Ariel. And then Rachel lives in San Francisco and is in design. And my 2 boys are in New York in cryptocurrencies. We moved in 85 to Paris from Chicago, and we've been there ever since. So before I forget, you're all invited to my apartment in Paris whenever you come through, and I'll take you on the roof to see the Eiffel Tower like you've never seen it. In the years since I've been in Paris, I was very active in the school where my kids all went. It was a French school, even though they liked you to believe it was an international school. In those days, it was very French. And I became the chief cook and bottle washer for the school as the president of the Parents Association, etc. And did that for many, many years. And I got involved with the American Women's Group in Paris, where I did tours sometimes. Well, I would make up the tours depending on what I wanted to do. So they could be architectural tours, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, or they could be Jewish tours of Paris. A lot on antiques, because I went into the antique business. I founded a company still in existence called La Source Parisienne. That's me. And I take people to buy antiques in Paris, whatever they're looking for. So at the same time, I got very involved in Jewish museums and became a member of the AEJM, which is the Association of European Jewish Museums, and it includes Israel. And I developed a passion for Jewish art and research in Jewish art. So that's what I do a lot of today. Israel is always has been and always will be so important to me and my family. We go there as often as possible. All our kids did their bar and bat mitzvahs at the wall. And what can I say? You know, very happy traveling. When I think about Israel, you know, Bruce and Lee are here today. That was really the best, was traveling with them and with Greg Herman to all the cool places that we went, all over the place.
All right, thank you, thank you. All right, we're gonna go Ellen.
All right,
Ellen,
I'm
Ellen,
bye.
Ellen, Michael will be next, and guys, we've got about 15 minutes max, so let's be quick if we can. I feel bad, but let's do that. Ellen, go ahead, and then Michael.
Okay, I guess I'm unmuted. It is just so wonderful to see everybody, and on Yom HaAtzmaut 75, after we celebrated the 25th anniversary on our year. A shout out to the people who I haven't seen for a long time. My roommate, Nancy Luria, I can't wait to hear from you. We lost touch with each other. This is fabulous. I'm from Cleveland. I went to Washington University along with several of the others here. I majored in Hebrew and education and spent my career in Jewish education. I think my favorite experience was studying at the university with Lee Levine and David Hartman. And my most profound memory was being stranded on an Egged bus overnight, coming back from the airport to Jerusalem after a trip with my roommate, Nancy Friedberg. Oh, and my name was Ellen Unger. I don't have that in my ID there. But Nancy and I had gone to Greece over winter break. We came back on the last bus from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem at about midnight, and it was raining in Tel Aviv. As we got to Jerusalem, it turned to snow, and our Egged bus was stranded in the hills of Jerusalem. We weren't rescued, so to speak, until the following morning, and it's something I'll never forget. I wish everybody well, good health, and mazel with your families and your friends. And thanks for making this a memorable Yom HaAtzmaut for me.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay, Michael.
You may remember, if you recall me at all, it would be as Mel Glatzer. I was an advisor to the one-year program in 72, 73, together with Gloria Dror. So we had an office on Scopus, and we had to approve your programs and send the results to your various universities and so forth. And we were in touch with many of you. I'm very delighted to hear how important a year that was for all of you. I was on the 66, 67 year course at the university, the junior year abroad program, and that was certainly a decisive year for my life. I've been living in Jerusalem ever since, except for a few years in Haifa. In 73, I married my wife, Shoshana, and we have 4 children and 17 grandchildren, and they're all living here in Israel, 2 in Jerusalem near us, and 2 in the south. And it was just nice to see all of you, and I wish you all well, and happy Yom HaAtzmaut to everyone.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, Nancy Luria, I hope I pronounced it right, and then Fred and Nancy to follow.
Okay, so wonderful to be here. I don't have all the close memories of that year, and yet for me it was a very formative year. I come from a small town in eastern Long Island, from Sayville, and I went after the one-year program and finished my degree at Brandeis. Then I went to graduate school at Columbia Teachers College, and I've been a special educator, or I started the resource room at SAR Academy in Riverdale, New York in 1978. And then I did some other things and came back to SAR 21 years ago as when we started a high school. And I've been there ever since as its director of admissions, and now and an associate principal. And now I'm about to retire in a few months. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful career for me. I've lived in Riverdale, where SAR is, since we're married 44 years ago. My husband is Dov Luria. Just to say, I have 4 children, 4 boys. 3 of them are now married. I have 5 grandchildren from 2 of the boys, and one, the youngest, lives in Israel now in Jerusalem. He was just ordained through the Rabbanut as a rabbi. One of my other sons is a psychiatrist. Another one is a entrepreneur. If you look up Wazer, W-A-Z-E-R, it's the first desktop water jet cutter. Very interesting. And he started that business around 7-8 years ago. And my third is a computer software engineer. I've been to Israel a lot of times over the years, and now that I have a son living there, we try to get there more than once a year. I think we want to spend some time next year in Israel, more than just a short visit. Maybe we hope to buy an apartment and have a place there. But since I have grandchildren, or will have, God willing, grandchildren in both Israel and America, I do want to have some home in Israel. And my best memory, really, a lot of you mentioned it, was the Sinai trip, and also the classes that Ellen mentioned were really important for me. I'm so happy to reconnect to Ellen, who we have not been in touch. And on this Zoom is also Ellie and Mark Render, who we have kept up a close friendship over the years. And I know that I know many of you from different experiences. And it's so nice to reconnect. Thank you very much to Phil and Miriam for putting this together.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go through it here. Fred and Nancy are next, then Ruth Green, Schreiber Green, Elizabeth, and then Seth and Gail. So let's go and we'll try to get these all done. Go ahead, Fred. Oh,
okay, I promise I'm going to speak very quickly, and I'm not going to tell you everything in my life, just the main points.
okay.
First thing I want to tell you, Phil, and your daughter, is thank you for doing this. And the most important thing for the evening for me tonight is to see all the people that I have such fond memories, like Mark Rudolph and Bruce Nathanson. Fortunately, I've reconnected to Kenny. Anyways, if I don't mention you, I'm really glad to see you still. After the year that when we came back, I graduated from Simmons, which is outside of Boston. I'm from Boston. I then went to Word Squad, the School of Social Work, and got a degree, got my degree, the master's degree there. In 1979, Fred and I came back when he finished rabbinic school, and we lived here till 1991, where I worked in Renana as the director of the Marriage and Family Center. When we left in 91, we moved first to Jacksonville, and now we were in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I've been in private practice since then in both places. I have a lot of family here, sisters and nieces and nephews, so we've continued to come to visit like every year. So it's been a lot of time that I spent in Israel. And when I'm not retired, I'm still working, but Fred retired 2 years ago, and we had bought an apartment about 20 years ago during the second Intifada when the prices were really low. So when he retired, we now spend time between North Carolina and Israel, because we have 2 children here that are married and we have 4 grandchildren and 1 in North Carolina.
I just want to say briefly that it was one of the best years of my life. One of the reasons why it's one of the best years of my life is because I met her 50 years ago. We've been married almost 48 years. I remember the Sinai trip with Kenny Sundberg playing drums while we were singing and loading up the bus. We had great professors. Bottom line is, I feel that I've had a wonderful life. Thank you so much, Phil. And the one thing that I would like to say is that listening to everyone, there's a lot of phenomenally successful people on this call. And I think that that says something about it going back to 1972, the psychological or whatever makeup of somebody that would decide in 72 to come on this program. And that speaks very highly of all of us. And I'm so amazed at how many successful people and they're on the call and what great things you've done.
Thank you. Elizabeth. Liz, you're muted. Muted. Elizabeth.
There I am.
There you are.
Okay. I live in Maryland. No, actually, I lived in Maryland when I went to the junior year abroad. I now live in Harbison, Delaware, which is about 10 minutes from either Rehoboth or Lewis, Delaware, whichever one you prefer. I like the beach. I spent most of my career working at IBM. I ended up as a program manager, and I had 28 years with them until I had the target on my back when I was what they call resource actioned, which means you're fired because we don't need you anymore. We're downsizing. So that was that. So on better things, I have 2 daughters. One daughter lives in a suburb of Denver, and she works in a company that does assistive systems for people with disabilities or the elderly who want to age in place. And then my other daughter is a realtor. She lives in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and she is the mother of my 5 grandchildren. Stop already. I was married for 25 years and my husband died suddenly. And for the last 20 years, I've been soloing. I've been back to Israel a number of times. The last time was actually last year in October. I was there for about 3 weeks. My favorite memories of my year abroad were a couple of things. My roommate, Leslie, who I love to death. People that I had, and my friends, Buddy and Ruthie, and Henry and Debbie. I think Henry left already, but Henry looks the same, except without the ponytail and the long hair. Does he not look the same? And riding around on Larry Zadenweber's Norton Commando 750 motorcycle. I loved that thing. Oh my goodness. My neighbor across the street, he has a motorcycle and he doesn't know it yet, but he's taken me around. I'm buying my own helmet. And then of course, our Sinai trip. And the best part of that, and also the saddest part of that, was that one of our members, I think he passed out, had sunstroke or something, and kept banging his head on the bar. And so they put him in the hospital in a lot. And on the way back, they said, well, you've got a choice. And that was Henry. Shh, don't tell anybody. You can either go and get ice cream, or you can go and to the hospital to pick up Henry. I said, I'm going to the hospital. They have clean bathrooms. And that was right after Sinai. So I'm going to the hospital. So those were my favorite memories. And A personal observation, I think that a lot of us maybe don't remember each other, because I think that there was kind of like a split. The people that lived in Mount Scopus, and then the ones that lived on campus in Jerusalem, in Rehavia, was it? Whatever it's called. And I think that's the difference why some people knew one group of people as opposed to the other. Now, over that 1 month break that we had, 5 of us went to Greece. Was the Nancy that just spoke, the Nancy that came with us on that trip? I don't remember.
Thank
And
you.
that's
We got it.
underneath this.
All right,
The
we have
big
3,
question.
we have 3 more, Seth, Gail, and then Mark Render. I didn't see his picture anywhere. So let's, Seth, Gail, and then Mark Render. Go ahead, Seth.
Happy Israel Independence Day, and thanks to the organizers. This is wonderful. I wrote this out so I could do it quickly. I will try to get through it as quickly as possible. I grew up in New Rochelle. I have a couple of degrees from Yale. I did not know anybody who said they had a Yale experience, though, on this Zoom, at least not when I was at Yale. And Yale gave me full credit, even though there are 1 or 2 courses that I never finished. I got a PhD eventually from Yale in Near Eastern languages. The best year of my life, my wife is sitting right next to me, was 1978 when I married my wife, Carol Kozak Ward, of the 1-year program. Her 1-year program in 73, 74, her experience was quite different from mine. She's listening. She sends regards to Helen and Judy and Cindy. We have 4 kids. Our daughter Gila did the 1-year program, but in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem. I think she made the wrong mistake, but she had a great time. She has 2 kids. I have a daughter with a disability who lives at home, and a son who's in his 30s, who's living the 30-something dream, also moving back to our basement. Our sons were both born in Israel. The older of them has 1 kid and another on the way. He is an architect and now working in development. I taught in Haifa and Beersheba from 1985 to 1991. I like to say that I achieved full klita when, like many Israelis, I left for a job at the University of Denver when there were no jobs for me in the Israeli Academy. I taught in Denver from 1991 to 2001. I taught in the University of Wyoming from 2003 until I retired last June. I led student tours from the University of Wyoming, mostly non-Jews. It was rare to have Jews at the University of Wyoming, from 2008 to 2019, and made 1 or 2 other trips when I was not leading tours. A lot of people mentioned synagogue roles. I've been leading services at Allied Jewish Senior Housing for about 3 decades. I have been an expert witness for religious civil rights in terms of some of the career things people have mentioned. Yes, indeed, I remember the Sinai trip like everybody else. And when I took my college students into what is now Egypt, I remember that climbing Jabal Musa was a lot easier when I was college age than it was when I was in my 60s. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you,
My
Seth.
favorite memory was studying Astroologia and Arabic in the main university with Chaim Tadmor, Chavalat Yafa, and a few of the other great faculty members there.
Thank you. Thank you. Gail and then Mark.
Hi, I'm Gail Berkman Weinberg. I'm used to being last now. I went from a B to a W when I married my husband. So I'm not surprised I'm almost last. I was in the Merkaz program, which was a program on Givat Ram for people who wanted to be Jewish educators. But I also took classes with people who were on Mount Scopus. My most memorable trip was a Sinai trip that I organized for Merkaz people and other people with Chevrat Haganah L'Teva. It was really a wonderful trip. Came back to Boston, finished my degree from Simmons College and Hebrew College, and took a year off and then went to social work school. Met my husband when I returned to Boston. He was in graduate school in Boston, and he got a job with a company called DuPont, and we moved to Delaware, to the Galut. And our children were born here. We're still here, although I'm threatening to move to the Silver Spring area because that's where my kids are. 3 sons, 2 little grandsons, and 1 wonderful daughter-in-law. And I still work. I worked in Jewish education as the educational director of our Hebrew school for like 23 years, taught B'nai Mitzvah, and did that while working for the state of Delaware. And I am a trainer educator using my teaching degree for adult protective service workers. And thank you for the opportunity to be on this call.
Okay. Thank you, Gail. I apologize for being last. I just go in the order that the Zoom pictures come up. So
I know, I was only kidding. I was only kidding.
I missed Mark. And so Mark, go ahead, Mark Render.
Yeah, I wrote on the chat about myself. You can read about my life. I and Ellie touched on stuff about our kids and everything. I just want, there's so many memories from that year on so many different levels, on levels of developing your Jewish identity, of exploring Israel. Ellie and I hitchhiked all over the Galilee. We're invited into people's homes, Arabs everywhere. We took a course on the Arab village, and we're directed to just walk into an Arab village and see what happens. And we did that. And my uncle dropped me off in a town near Netanya, and we had an incredible day picking strawberries and meeting people. It was every day was an experience in every way. And we ended up here. We've been living here for all these years. I'm a transportation planner, very involved in anyone who lives in Israel. You can blame lots of things on me. Like in transportation, but it's been it's been the ability to really to move someplace and to develop a career and influence the life of people around you. That's been very, very satisfying. I'm on the verge of retirement and very happy that my daughter is working with me in the company that I founded, and it's been a good life. Yes.
And we also developed we developed an organization for our disabled daughter called Sad Kadima. You can go on the website and you can see it. It's based on a Hungarian method. And we were part of the founders of Kilat Didia, which Andy mentioned, here in southern Jerusalem, which today there's many congregations who have the same approach. Women having aliyot and combined an Orthodox congregation with the liberal side.
Ellie, if you could send that websites and stuff describing that would be great.
Sure, no problem. Kilat Didia, you can load also on the website. They're all inside Kadima as well.
Thank you. All right. Have I missed
Kadima thing? Did they put it in?
Have I missed did I miss anybody? I think we got everyone. I'll be quick for I'll just do my review. University of Minnesota, graduated Minnesota, went to medical school, and was a pediatric gastroenterologist for my career. My last 25 years was as the chief medical officer of Children's Hospitals and Clinics of Minnesota. And I retired about 6 years ago. I got bored out of my mind within 3 months. So I go to school. I take 3 classes a semester at the University of Minnesota. I live 6 months of the year in Palm Springs, 6 months of the year in Minnesota. You can guess which months I live where. And have 3 sons, 4 grandchildren. Been married soon. September 1st, I'll be married 50 years. And I always feel guilty when I say in front of my wife at times that being at Hebrew U in 72 to 73 was the greatest year of my life. Absolutely the greatest year of my life. Al and Bruce
did it differently.
Al and Bruce and Steve were phenomenal. And I've been back to Israel about 7-8 times. We just took our entire family for one of my granddaughters' bat mitzvah, and we took everybody. And the best experience I had there was, man, we had great experience, but one time Al and I took a trip with the book Genesis 1948 and Jerusalem. We walked from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and followed the battles of the War of Independence, and that was that. And otherwise, that's it. Life is good. It is wonderful to see everybody, and you now all have everybody's email. If for those who couldn't be here today, we told them we were going to record it, and so I want to thank Miriam once again. She's just been great to help us, and so thank you, Miriam.
Thank
And
you.
Leslie and Bernie, we need to get together. We live probably 3 miles apart, right?
If that.
And so I'll, if everyone is okay with it, I will be sharing this recording. I'll share the list of everyone who registered, so you'll at least have emails. And if you want the slideshow that I did or any specific photos, I'm happy to share that as well. You have my email. You can always email me at alumni@afhu.org, which is probably easier than giving you my personal one. I'll still get it. And I just think this has been really amazing and an honor to be a part of. I always joke that when I do my intro that I'm a product of the university, because I don't know that I'd be here if my parents hadn't met there. I think they may have been a little disappointed when I came back empty-handed. But I got my guy later on. Yeah, just thank you everyone, and a big thank you to Phil for spearheading this. And if anyone does want to goes to visit Israel, you don't live there and you want a tour, feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help coordinate so you can get a tour of any of the 6 campuses now.
All right. So goodbye, everybody. Chag Sameach.
Thank you.
Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you.